The following is a presentation of the Mat Talk Podcast Network.
You are now tuned into the PA Power Podcast, College Edition, featuring Rob Waltko and Joe Youngblood. PA Power Wrestling. Pennsylvania is wrestling.
All right, fans, welcome to the Open Room post-NCAA Tournament edition with Rob and Joe. And it did take us a few weeks to decompress from all the wrestling going on in Pittsburgh and at NCAAs. And now we're here to break it down and talk about the PA guys and, of course, the champs at every weight class and the team race. So, Rob, you were out there. You got tickets. What was it like? Tell us a little bit about the atmosphere for those that didn't get a chance to make it out.
It was a lot of fun. It was the second time that I've attended. I went to New York City 2-3 years back, and then obviously in Pittsburgh, my hometown. It was a good atmosphere. There was, Pittsburgh's small enough that wrestling fans kind of took over the city. So everywhere you went, you were bumping into people. Versus New York, obviously it's just so busy, and some of these smaller towns where I don't know. I assume Omaha gets ran over by wrestling people, but there's not enough space, not enough places to eat. But I thought Pittsburgh was a good choice, and yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was definitely a good time, and hope it's out on the East Coast here again soon.
Yeah, from all things that I heard, I wasn't able to get out there. I wasn't able to get tickets, unfortunately, and it put a damper on things. But I watched just about every match I could from the friendly confines of my laptop and or living room, and it looked like it was again, Pittsburgh put on a good show, but I obviously would have much rather been there. But the advantage of being home and watching is being able to have that see without any distractions. You're watching locked into the matches you want to be locked into, and you're putting all the different matches up on the screen as many as you can fit. So in that regard, it was fun to watch, to sit back and watch. But I do stand by it's the single best sporting event to attend. One, because of the longevity of the 3 days, and two, because of just the excitement of that it provides and drama over the course of the tournament.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I think maybe the loudest the arena got was when Vincenzo was taking down White, and then Lewis was taking down Marinelli shortly thereafter. The whole arena was just going bonkers for that, so that was a lot of fun. But jumping into 125, obviously Spencer Lee brought home the title. What do you think, honestly, man? What do you think the deal was with him this year? Was he just maybe not peaked, a little bit off, or what? Because he looked unbeatable, and he's looked unbeatable the last two tournaments. I can't call it, Joe. What are your thoughts on him? In March, you ever going to bet against him?
Gamer. He's a gamer. That's what he is. He when his best is needed, he's at his best when it's needed, and that's what he did the weekend of NCAAs 2 years in a row now. I don't know that he gets disinterested during the regular season, or maybe just Revere was a bad matchup for him, style-wise, and that's what caused him fits and, just didn't make him look good, or, weight cut, nicked up a little bit. I don't know, but when the lights were on in Pittsburgh, his hometown, he brought it and walked away as a, two-time national champ after his sophomore season. Yeah,
I think you nailed it. He's a gamer, and there's just something about guys like that have won their whole life that they're just not going to lose. Or maybe it's psychological. And Piccinini sees him across the mat when the lights are on. Maybe he gets a little nervous or a little bit psyched out because he knows this guy's won every national tournament, every world tournament pretty much he's ever been in. So impressive work by Spencer. A couple other PA guys, Curry went 0-2, and Moisey, anticlimactic end to his career, hampered by injuries, went 0-2 as well. It stinks he never was able to relive that magic as a true freshman. What did you think of his year, his career, his tournament, Joe?
So I always think back fondly of Moisey's career because of what he did his freshman year when he was at WVU, and I felt that was I was excited then, and he pumped life into that program in a sense because that was the first year for Sammy Henson, and you kind of felt maybe they were going to turn a corner, and this was going to get them out of where they were before, kind of like in a rut in a sense under the old regime. But then it never panned out, and the injuries caught up to him. I mean, the guy endured a lot of injuries, and I know we were kind of down on him at times. But for those that know, there was a very heartfelt Facebook post by Sammy Henson in regards to Zeke, I believe heading into Big 12s, and talking about of all the kids he's coached, he's never coached a kid like Zeke Moisey before, that's overcome so many different obstacles and gentlemen of the sport and things. It was really neat, see that coach put it out there for one of his former wrestlers, and kind of put things in perspective that Moisey was never 100% after that first year. And again, knowing him from PA, he was always, he seemed like he was always hurt when he was in high school. I believe he tore a labrum when he was in high school. I remember him wrestling with the shoulders, the strap around his shoulder, like to help hold it in place. To the dislocated elbow he suffered the year after the NCAA finals run. So again, like, the talent was there, but I don't think maybe his body worked with him as much as it could have over the course of his career, at the college level. And it's unfortunate, looking back now, like he did have the ability, but he did All-American last year, his last year at West Virginia, but again, I felt like he almost limped to that as well, and he had to gut out that performance to get on the podium.
Yeah, never just quite seemed to be 100%, but great career. Not a lot of guys can say they're two-time All-Americans and national finalists. So, all the best to Moisey and whatever he does next. 33 was absolutely stacked with Pennsylvania talent. You had 3 All-Americans with Pletcher, Lezak, and DeSanto, and then Philippi falling in the round of 12, and Bravo Young, of course, placing out of Penn State. Pletcher, he wrestled solid. He gets himself in the semis. I think he's a guy that doesn't get talked about a lot because he's not very flashy, and I don't know, maybe he hasn't pushed those top guys, but he's as solid as they get. He actually had a win over DeSanto in the Conci semis. DeSanto had a win over Lezak prior to that. Philippi, really tough draw. I think if he exchanged spots with Lezak or Ernesti as a 6 or an 8 or 9, he gets in. But unfortunately, he loses to Pletcher for the millionth time they've wrestled, and then catches Bravo Young after that. So not the easiest draw in the world for him. One guy I want to talk about, though, DeSanto. He made a big jump this year, and instead of just being a brawler, it's a lot more controlled rage, I'd call it, than before. Do you think he's a title contender next year? Because I think he took a huge jump this year, and I think if he takes another jump like that, he's going to be pushing for the title. I mean, frankly, he beat the champ and was close with the runner-up earlier this year, so he's got to be in the mix, right?
No, definitely. He'll be in the discussion. It'll be interesting to see if Fick stays at 33, and because he looks so big. Siriano looks big at 33 as well, but there's guys that he'll have to contend with, again, having wrestled tough against them. I don't know. I think there's still some room for maturity from DeSanto. He had a tournament where he went out and he just wrestled hard. He just wrestled. There's no antics, nothing, and he out wrestled his seed to finish 5th in the nation. He wrestled a close match with Steven Miocic in the quarters, and on the drop down the way back through, he avenges a loss to Austin Gomez. Not just avenges the loss, Rob. Put it on him.
Authority
in that blood round match, like the way in which he beat him, and then beating Lezak in consolation quarters, and losing to Pletcher in the Conci semis. He had a great tournament, and he's been a guy that's kind of been in our crosshairs a lot for some of the on the mat and off the mat antics. But when the lights came on, as we say, he's he did what he had to do. I'm sure he wanted to finish a little bit higher, but I think right around 5th place is probably where we picked him going into the tournament just because 33 was loaded. And you could have thrown darts at the dartboard and picked the 4 guys ahead of him in any order. And there could have been some other surprise that could have snuck in there. Philippi could have finished ahead of him. I'm sure some people had him pick finishing there because just how deep that weight class was, as you said.
Yeah, no, you said it. One thing about DeSanto's antics is the 2 times he really acted up this year is when he won versus Lezak and Suriano. It kind of freaked out after he won, but he seems to lose pretty gracefully this year, which I think is a big step up in maturity. And like you said, we've been kind of tough on him at times, but he took it on the chin when he lost. He handled it like a man. So, more power to him, and good to see a PA guy placed, even if they did have to go across the country. 41 was a weight where I think the PA guy that placed was maybe a little surprising, Kyle Shoup. Personally, I had him placing in my brackets. I had him in the quarters. I thought Albert was a really good matchup for him, and I knew how good Shoup was on top and would catch guys by surprise. But great tournament by him. Murin puts himself in the round of 12. He's a match away from placing. I think he really showed a lot, beating Tristan Moran and then beating Mikey Carr. But Carr really lousy end of the year, 8th at the Big Tens, then takes losses to Murin and Finley. He didn't wrestle a ton this year. He defaulted out at Vegas. Didn't wrestle between his first dual meet in Vegas. Do you think it's an injury thing with him? And what else do you got on 141? What did you like there?
Starting with Mikey Carr, yeah, very, very disappointing, end to the season for him. Murin exercising some demons, getting that win when it mattered most. It was a much publicized win we talked about when Mikey Carr beating Murin when they wrestled out in Champaign earlier in the season. Carr mocking Murin a little bit, and I'm sure it was a little fuel for his fire. I thought Murin had a great tournament. We talked about him and how he had to start winning these matches consistently and staying in them and to turn the corner. And he gets to that round 12. Chad Redd, again, there's another guy that maybe, it seemed like all these guys that we were tough on, peaked at the right time. Like Chad Redd was a guy who was like up and down. And I think I probably used the comparison with him like getting on a roller coaster because there was flashes of brilliance from him. And then there was like, he laid some eggs and he comes in as a 16 seed and, he gets on the podium. And finishes 8th place. So, he grinds out a 4-1 decision over Max Murin in that round of 12 and, gives Mitch McKee a match there in that consolation quarter afterwards. Like, just funny how these chips fell for these guys. Shoup, again, way out wrestling his seed, as you talked about, was huge for him. And then we talk about the Penn State, the effect on Nick Lee making the semis and losing a tough match to eventual runner-up Joey McKenna from Ohio State.
Yeah, he always goes on a tear, it seems like, in the consies. But, yeah, Nick Lee's a buzzsaw. I was actually pretty impressed by Demas, the way he was able to handle him. But, you look at that weight class, not kind of going off the deep end too much, but, Ironman's already said he's taking a red shirt. Yanni very well could take an Olympic red shirt. Nick Lee and Dom Demas could be in the title contention next year, I wonder.
Yeah, and I think moving forward, if Murin stays at 41, I think Murin will come in that preseason top 10. No, I don't see him below 10th, especially if that holds true with Ironman. Well, not Ironman, but Yanni. If Yanni takes an Olympic red shirt, just one more spot, thought upon as be a potential All-American. I think it's going to be thought as a not potential. I think it's a year where he needs the All-American.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what we saw out of him at NCAAs was kind of what I expected coming into the year. I was pretty high on him. So, I think we both beat him up a little bit towards the end of the year, and then he started wrestling well. So maybe he listened to us. Maybe he owes us, or we owe him an apology, and he should be thanking us. But, yeah, hopefully he keeps progressing.
No, I think he wants on. And he knew that was a good way to get the invite.
Yeah, well, hopefully he doesn't hold it against us. What did you see at 49? Kind of a weak wait for Pennsylvania.
Yeah, as far as Pennsylvania goes, not a whole lot to write home about. You had Cortland Schuyler from Lehigh, and
Maruka was 1 and 2.
Yeah, I thought Maruka was set up for a. To have a nice little run there, and he wrestled tough against Lugo, and then
he knocked off Gefeller after that.
again, no one saw that coming. Gefeller going 0-2 barbecue at the at NCAAs. But the fact is that he catches Oliver from NC State, who was the 9 that got upset. Well, didn't get upset. He lost to Jarrett Egan from Iowa State in that an 8-9 match in the second round. He wrestled tough. I don't know. I'm still waiting for him to turn that corner, as I say so many times. I don't know, kind of maybe live up to the hype a little bit that ended up getting him his opportunity out at Arizona State. This weight class overall, though, if you look at it, Rutgers was able to crown their second national champion program history, second of the night, in Anthony Ashnault. Again, he was just a guy I felt was just on a mission this year. People say, well, we're from Rutgers, and same like kind of story on for the people that aren't casual fans and they kind of turn their nose up at Rutgers. Those are the same fans that don't even realize that Rutgers is a Big Ten school right now. So, it's not like he ran from any competition, didn't wrestle anyone over the course of the season. And that Rutgers team has only improved under Scott Goodale. And, Rob, we just talked about it off the air before we started about Rutgers, and, not an easy place to win. And Scott Goodale takes over and makes him a top 10 program.
No, impressive tournament by them. Their guys were primed and ready to go. And, regardless of your thoughts on headgear-gate or that whole 33-pound match, the Rutgers, they did an awesome job. And, we were sitting out. I was actually in a box for a few of the sessions. My buddy had some extra tickets, and we were sitting next to the Rutgers crowd. They were loud, and, it just seemed like their guys were winning. The consies, everyone was picking up bonus points. So they wrestled tough, and hats off to them. I think you're definitely heading in the right direction.
Hey, before we're going further, you brought it up, and I wasn't going to say anything. You brought up headgear-gate. Not to rehatch 33. Based upon seeing the replay, just give me your opinion, and then I'm gonna hit you with another question to see if it changes your mind on anything. So what's your opinion of the headgear-gate?
I think he grabbed it 100%. Without getting into it too much, it's weird because I think the stalemate kind of stunk. I think he grabbed the headgear, and I was cheering for Fix, admittedly, but I think Suriano out-wrestled him. I feel like the right guy won, but Suriano still got kind of the breaks that maybe he didn't deserve, if that makes sense.
So let me ask you this. If John Smith does not waste his last challenge on that bogus hands to the face he tried to drum up, and he had a brick to throw, do you think they overturn that takedown and continue wrestling?
The match might be over. They might say, or
the 1 point. I'm sorry, not the legal point, and give it to Fix.
Yeah, I think so. And
in my heart of hearts, I believe that the only reason they didn't overturn it is because of probably the backlash they would have received, because there was no ability to officially challenge the call. They didn't have the brick. They were out. So therefore, the officials, I probably acknowledge it and will own it, saying that it 100% was a grab. But there's no way they could have robbed Suriano of the call because they didn't have the brick to challenge it in the first place.
No, I don't disagree. I guess we'll never know, though.
No, and again, the better guy won. I mean, when you don't take a shot the entire match, as Fix basically didn't take one, and it was a continuation of the first match, which wasn't a good match, you can't expect to win. And you watch Dayton Fix score points almost at will on other opponents, and then something about Nick Suriano is like his kryptonite, and he forgets how to score and doesn't. So it's just odd to me, and it's a bad style matchup for Dayton Fix.
No, I 100% agree.
Let's keep rolling. Let's get into 157 here, and a bit of controversy, a lot of PA power on display in this weight class, pushing 3 guys into the semifinals. 3 guys from the state of Pennsylvania. We'll talk about all of them, but right away, give me your initial thoughts on this weight class.
Yeah, what do you think of 57? You go first.
All right, sure. Caleb, I'm going to start Caleb Young. He's a 6th seed. He makes the semifinals, beating Deacon in sudden victory. Someone who, had gotten the best of him earlier this season. And, from there, he dropped down and he got Alec Pantaleo from Michigan, lost 6-2 there and dropped down to 5th place match and, beat Deacon again, a second time, 7-5 in sudden victory. So I'm not going to say this was a statement weekend for Young, but I think it was as far as, him putting him more or less putting everyone on notice, staking his territory and his claim to be considered a possible title contender next year at 57, based upon his performance here, with 2 wins over Deacon, making the semifinals, and he just wrestled well. He wrestled the way that he was capable of basically every match. And that was refreshing to see. And again, this is kind of a reoccurring theme, Rob, not to get off the subject, but we're talking about these Iowa guys being on point when it mattered. And, that's kind of the name of the game. Like there's, you can get on, losses here and there in the regular season, but the fact of the matter is it's what you do when it comes time for March. And how many times did we say that in our different podcasts? Like, we'll see what happens when March gets here. And the Iowa guys, they had a good tournament. They were looking very strong through the early rounds. And, again, they didn't run out of steam. They just didn't have as many bullets in the gun as Ohio State and Penn State did. Staying with 57, obviously, we'll go to the other semifinal, and there's a little bit of controversy with the Nolf Hidley match. Some thought Hidley had the takedown secured towards the end of the match there with less than 10 seconds to go. No takedown awarded, and Nolf escapes with a 3-2 victory in a rematch of last year's national final. On a personal level, we had Hayden on the podcast. Seems like a great young man that has his head on his shoulders and does everything right and lives the lifestyle and pays the price to be a champion. I don't want to hide behind the rules, but it just didn't look like he had complete control to warrant a takedown. And if I take some flack for that statement, so be it. It's just what I think. Nolf looked vulnerable. Like didn't look himself so much in that match, and maybe just because Hidley had the chance to wrestle him before and kind of knew what he was going to do and was able to stifle some of the things that Nolf does that makes him great. In the final, I felt maybe I expected Nolf to really open it up in the final, being his last collegiate match. And, he didn't major Tyler Berger, but I just thought maybe he'd put it on a little bit more, considering some of the things that Berger said leading up to the end of the season. Side note, the Hidley brothers having some great Twitter banter last few days. Anyone that hasn't given them a follow yet, I'm giving them a shameless plug. Just some of their stuff on Twitter is just outstanding. Talking about gas station hot dogs this week. So if you want a good chuckle, take a look at them on Twitter. Look them up. Looking at the rest of the weight class as far as PA goes, Zach Hartman. He was a guy I thought would win that first match over Griffin Perriott and didn't. And, as a result, dropped down into the consolation bracket. And, he picked up 2 wins there before losing to Thomas from Oklahoma. And, it was a match I thought he was going to win. And it just kind of a lot of scoring, a lot of back and forth. Hartman was a guy I had as a dark horse. I thought they could have All-Americaned as a freshman. It didn't come to fruition for him.
Yeah. I think, you pretty much said everything I wanted to. One thing with Caleb Young, I think he's going to be the second highest ranked Hawkeye coming into next year. So even though he maybe doesn't get the credit that some of these guys get, he's just as likely to win a national title as anyone not named Spencer Lee. So hats off to him. Deacon was a guy that I've been really high on, and for him to beat him twice is quite impressive. Zach Hartman, disappointing tournament. I think he showed maybe some weaknesses, but that's to be expected with most true freshmen. He has a lot of strengths too. He's never out of a match. He can put people on their back. So I expect him to keep improving. And, just talking with him, I don't think he's going to stop working hard. I expect that he's going to keep getting better, and he'll find himself on that podium next year, hopefully. 65, we had, I think 2 PA guys in the semis with Shields and Vincenzo, and then Chance obviously battling back for third. I want to talk on Chance first. Admittedly, I filled out whole brackets for these contests I'm in. I didn't have him placing. I thought he would lose to Wick and then kind of sputter out in that blood round match, and he did the exact opposite. He came back and, beat a lot of butt to come back and take third, and hats off to him. That takes a lot from a guy that's used to winning everything his whole life to take a hard loss and reel off a bunch of wins in a row. That shows the type of man that he's become, and I think I speak for most of Pennsylvania when I say I'm proud of that, and hope that he has a successful senior level career. Shields, nice tournament, gets himself in the semis. Tashawn Campbell ends up losing in the round of 12 at the end of his career, but wrestled a good tournament. He wasn't expected to go that far and did. So hats off to him, and best of luck in whatever he does next. But obviously the big one is Chenzo and Makai Lewis. Makai is someone that his pedigree is very, very high. He had a very good summer. He's obviously got a lot of gifts. He's a very tricky guy to wrestle. His balance is just so difficult to get through those legs. I was shocked he beat Chenzo, because Chenzo is the king of winning close matches. He seems to figure everyone out, but that was probably the biggest shock of the tournament for me, outside maybe Miles Martin losing. What are your thoughts? Is that a fluke? Do you call Chenzo the favorite next year, or is Makai the man until further notice?
I'm always big on what have you done for me lately. And with that said, until Makai Lewis is out of the tournament next year, he's still the champ. Just like we referred to Chenzo as a champ this year and how he rose to the occasion, Makai Lewis rose to the occasion. I would say Lewis beating Marinelli was one of the bigger shocks to the tournament as well. Lewis had a phenomenal tournament. He beats not only Marinelli, he beats Wick, and he beats Vincenzo Joseph. Like, he goes up and takes out the toughest 3 guys from the Big Ten to win a national championship. Obviously he was rewarded with the outstanding wrestler. Kind of piggybacking your Marsteller comment, when I don't know what it is about, up to that match, seeing him get pinned by Wick like that, he didn't know what hit him. And it looked just like last year when Wick pinned him for third place. Kind of got, just caught him and chanced him to do. And I thought about, okay, well, again, we talk about conflict of styles and how some guys just have other guys' numbers. And then, watching Chance get into those wrestlebacks, and he's got Demetrius Romero in a first match, and he pours it on him. And then, he's got Marinelli, the 1 seed after that. He puts it on him 9-6, and he beats Shields again. He avenges a loss to Shields in the Conti semis, and then he gets Wick. And you're thinking, like, oh, man, what's this going to look like? And he goes out and beats him. Again, he did not meet the expectations that a lot of people put upon him, but he'll be the first to tell you he didn't meet his own expectations when we had him on for an interview. And I think pride or Pennsylvania pride is what I will think about when I look back at and think about Chance's college career. Overcoming obstacles, overcoming personal demons, and finishing up as a 2-time All-American with a 3rd and 4th place finish. And I think I can sit here and say, like you said, you wish him the best in his senior level career. I think maybe his best is yet to come. He's very, very upfront saying that freestyle is his true love when it comes to wrestling, and he could. He's still young, and I'm sure he'll catch on somewhere coaching, have somewhere to train, and make the most of it, and a run at Olympic and world titles in the near future. Yeah,
I hope so. And even though he didn't hit anyone's expectations, I think his expectations changed a lot. Right, going into college, he was going to be a 4-timer undefeated, and then it was like, this guy can't even get his life together. Is he ever going to wrestle again? I think at one point I probably commented that I'm like, yeah, that guy's done. There's no way he's coming back. So hats off to him. He showed a lot of toughness, that's for sure. At 74, heck of a tournament for Mikey Labriola, coming in, taking 6th. He knocked off Dylan Leidy, who'd beaten him in the past, Jacoby Smith, and Devin Skatska en route to a sixth place pick. I think we both looked at him earlier this year, and I was like, I don't know if he can place. He's good enough to, but the weight's so tough. And you're like, no, he'll place. So you were definitely more bullish on him than me. But how good can this guy be? Can he contend for a title next year or in the future? I think he can. I think especially if Hall or Valencia go up or redshirt, even as tough as this weight is, he could be in the mix. And, he's certainly going to keep getting better. That kid's an animal.
Yeah. Let's not forget he wrestled Amin tough in that Conci semi, losing 5-3. So he was close to getting into that Conci final there too. And he's just a freshman. Got 3 more years, 3 more cracks at this. And if he stays a career 174 pounder, you just look at the guys that are here now, they're all going to vacate the weight before him. So that bodes well. I do think that he is a future title contender. I think I give him again, if we're going to project that he's top 5 probably next year at 174 pounds without a doubt. And we'll see what else it holds for him. Like you said about the Olympic red shirt, I don't know. I think Valencia takes an Olympic red shirt, and we'll see about Mark Hall. I don't think so. I don't think it behooves him yet, but you never know.
I wonder if Hall maybe goes up to 184 and Brooks steps in at 74, assuming that Rashid doesn't get a 6th year. I wonder if that's maybe their best lineup because Brooks, he wrestled 74 this year. He doesn't look all that big, though he's young. He might be able to slap some size on. But just Hall, thinking of him, maybe wanting to get up to 86 for freestyle, maybe it makes sense for him to jump up if he can't get to 74. So who knows? Penn State certainly has an embarrassment of riches. No matter what lineup they put out there, they're going to be competitive, to say the least. 84 had some good PA power. Ryan Price coming in 4th. It's good to see him end his career on the podium. There was a very well-written local article in a paper near Milton where he's from about him, like kind of debating quitting last year and how tough it was for him to come back after being round of 12 twice. That I think is definitely worth a read if you can dig it up. I'll try to find it and remember to retweet it. But just really touches on the emotions of being a college wrestler that's kind of missing your goals just by a little bit. So happy to see him do well. Dakota Gear, 7th place. I predicted him beating Renan in that first round, though. Renan, he has a torn ACL. I think I saw he tweeted. So, hats off to Renan for toughing it out this year, but I think he'll be back and better than ever next year. Zavatsky caps off his career with an 8th place finish, 2-time All-American. Bonacorsi, beats Parker, loses to Dean, and then draws Gear. Kind of a tough draw for him. He beat Parker, who placed, and he'd beaten Ness this year, who was in the semis. That's got to sting, but both those pit guys kind of caught some lousy draws, but I think they're still doing the right things. 84 will be interesting next year. If no one comes up in weight, it's kind of wide open with Miles Martin leaving. Obviously, Drew Foster's gone, the champ. We'll see what happens with Rashid, but that's going to be a very, very interesting weight. It could be much like 49 was this year, where it's just a bunch of guys kind of toss them a bag, see who comes out on top. What were your impressions on that weight, over in Pittsburgh, Joe?
Before the tournament started, it looked like a collision course between Miles Martin and Shakur Rashid, and we'd see the match we didn't see at Big Tens. And by Friday night, by Thursday night, take that back. That was scrambled by Chip Ness from North Carolina, and by Friday night we knew that Miles Martin was not going to, win another NCAA title. I want to say, Zavatsky being the 3 seed when Shakur Rashid went down, I said to myself, I know I said to you off the air, this was the perfect opportunity for Zavatsky to make the final. And, then he gets tripped up by Drew Foster, who, again, ended up going on to win the title, have a great tournament. Anino Bonacorsi, I thought was going to roll after he beat Emery Parker. And, you see a tale of two paths. He loses to Dean, and you say he comes down and talked about getting gear. And Emery Parker loses that match, and he drops down, and, He wins a nail biter over a guy from Wiseman from Mizzou, and he beats Cash Wilkie from Iowa. Beats Colbury from Iowa State. Beats Zavatsky then in the Kansi quarters, and before losing to Miles Martin. There's some guys here that stumbled but then came back. I think the biggest disappointment is Shakir Rashid, losing and then losing again to Dakota Gear. But as you said, you were high on him to All-American as well this tournament, and so I guess you shouldn't be surprised by that outcome of that match. Thoughts if Rashid gets that 6th year? All things point to that he is getting it. So he gets that 6th year. He's back at 84.
Yeah, I don't remember him being hurt. I mean, I'm not a diehard Penn State guy, but that one seems a little hokey to me. I think Kassar certainly, he missed 2 years. He should 100% get a 6th year. But Rashid, it's like, come on, didn't he just kind of lose a wrestle off as a sophomore and then not compete the rest of the year? That's how I remember it. Again, he could have had something that I'm not aware of, but. Yeah, I don't know. I hope the guys that are legitimately injured can get the 6th year, but I don't want them handing them out like candy just to balance people's lineup. But yeah, like you said, sometimes the bad draw kind of kills you. It's maybe you win a match you shouldn't have, and then you get a worse draw. Perfect example is 197, Tom Slay. He beats Jay Aiello, loses in the quarters, then he has to run into Jacob Warner, who got upset to place. And that was, Slay was the highest placing Pennsylvania guy at 97. There was no All-American, from native Pennsylvania, obviously Bo Nickel, but, kind of for his troubles, ended up running into Jacob Warner. Woodley had a rough tournament. Ethan Laird from Ryder wrestled pretty well. He ended up knocking off Woodley, getting himself in the round of 16. But this weight, again, man, another one that's going to be wide open next year. I think Colin Moore's ahead of the pack, but 2 through 20 is going to be crazy next year. What were your thoughts on the PA guys, and how much are we going to miss watching Bo Nickel wrestle, because he sure is something special.
One thing I will say, it's not disappointment when he locked that cradle up at the end of the match, get that takedown and make it 5-1. I so wanted him to just crank it over one last time, give us kind of give the animals some raw meat to chew upon, and animals being the fans. I thought he kind of just held on there and ran the clock out, but and that was like an un-Bo Nickel like fashion to kind of hatch a lead like that. But in any event, Bo Nickel. These Penn State guys that have graduated last years, and you put Bo Nickel on it, Bo Nickel, Jason Nolf, Zane Rutherford, they're talents that don't come along that often. And the fact that they graced the same team for as long as they did together was nothing short of phenomenal. And it's no surprise that they've had the success as a team they've had. But these guys, Bo Nickel, I don't know that of all of them, but there was a guy that was more exciting than Bo Nickel. You look at Rutherford was very methodical and in his dismantling of his opponents. Nolf, funky creative, but Nickel was he was charismatic to boot. Where Nolf was he would go out and everything he did as spectacular was, he kind of expected it to happen. And he was very humble and not that Bo Nickel is arrogant or cocky, but he just had this swagger to him and his charisma that followed him around, and this blinding confidence in his own abilities that just made him likable. There's not many people that I've ever heard say I don't like Bo Nickel. You may not like what he does because you're a fan of another program, but everyone that I've ever heard say anything negative about him respected the fact that he was all he was a fierce competitor that went out and won matches.
What were your thoughts on him kind of decking Hokett really fast and trying to help him up? And Hokett obviously didn't want it, and they kept trying. I mean, is that him being legitimately a humble guy? I think it is. I think it's kind of ignorance is bliss. He's trying to be nice, but maybe doesn't realize that you just embarrassed this guy. He doesn't want any help. I don't know if I'd want him helping me up after throwing me on my dome like he did to Hokett and many others.
Yeah, I think it was maybe I felt it was sincere, but it was one of those things where I think he felt bad about in the manner in which he did pack him up. that Hokit's ego and pride took a shot there, and he wanted nothing to do with any sympathy help up. He was a man who's going to dust himself off and get up on his own.
Yeah, no, I don't think it was Bo showboating. I think he's just a really nice guy, but it's like when you hold the door for someone when they're 30 feet away and you make them jog because they feel bad. It's like you're almost being too nice. Like, just let the guy get up on his own. Heavyweight, obviously the big story here from a PA standpoint is, there's a couple. I think obviously Cassar winning for Penn State and Jordan Wood coming in taking fourth. Really wrestled an awesome tournament. I was glad to see him push through. Very, very similar to some of these other weights. If Gable takes a red shirt, Wood's going to be ranked second. Or if Cassar, for whatever reason, doesn't get a sixth year, Wood could put himself in the finals. I'll be honest. I thought Cassar maybe didn't do a ton in that semis, but he came away with the win. He was smart enough to take advantage of Gable's mistakes. But I'd love to see them battle next year. I hope they both compete. I hope Gable doesn't redshirt. And again, Cassar 100% deserves a 6th year. I hope he gets it. What were your thoughts on that tournament, or that weight class during the tournament? Excuse me.
Big shout out to Southeast PA native, Boyertown High School, Jordan Wood on his tournament. Kind of exercising some demons from years past. Last year was in that round of 12 against I believe it was Yusuf Hermida from Maryland, and posted on his way up or on a mat return and broke his hand and wasn't able to continue. So it was nice to see Wood get onto the podium, and he had some big wins in doing it. He beat Sam Stoll, and I know everyone's like, well, Stoll with the 28th seed. Traditionally, like, that's where kind of maybe Wood has struggled, was with the bigger guys. And, hey, Stoll still was the preseason number 1 guy in the country. And there was definitely some gas in the tank and treading the tires with him. He was battling some injuries, and, the season didn't go as planned for him or as planned for anyone in the Iowa program. But nevertheless, still a tough out, and beats him. And then he wrestles Derek White pretty tough in the semis. The Cassar-Stevenson match, I'll agree. I don't think Cassar did a lot, but not to, I guess, be in 100% agreement with you. He did what he had to do to win. He was just crafty enough. He didn't exert himself. He didn't have to open himself up. He did exactly what he had to do in order to get the victory. And I don't know if you want to call it the veteran craftiness or not, because it's not like Steven's been around and probably has, as far as international and big tournament experience, has more than Cassar does in wrestling on big stages. But something about that matchup, Cassar is a bad matchup for him. I don't know if it's mental, or
I think he's just a little bit better. And I'm a big Gable Stevenson fan, but he's beaten him twice, and I guess comparable results are very similar, right? He went out and put it on Derek White in the finals. I think, Cassar is just a little bit, he's a man. He's a 5th-year senior versus a true freshman, and works out with very, very good guys, the best guys in our country, and got the better of them. But I'd love to see them wrestle hopefully 3, 4, or 5 more times next year. I'd watch that all day. Those guys are both really impressive.
And Cassar majoring White in the finals, avenging his only loss of the season he took in the final of the scuffle to Derek White. Yeah,
that was more impressive than anything, just because he took that loss and he showed no fear. So hats off to Cassar, and like I said, hopefully he gets a 6th year, because I think he's really deserved it, or he's really earned it.
All right, so hey, Rob, let's talk some rumors. Let's talk some things going on. Seth Gross in the transfer portal. What have you heard, if anything, about Seth Gross and where he might end up next year?
All I've really heard is that they might block his Wisconsin waiver or transfer to Wisconsin. And then there's those rumors, I don't know who, I've seen it mostly just online, but that he would look at Penn State if he couldn't. And, I'm sure the haters would love if Penn State had 3 6th-year seniors in their lineup. But I think hopefully it comes out soon where he's going to be looking at least. Because I'm interested, although I kind of liked him at South Dakota State, just the small town guy, small team guy, winning their first national title. I thought it was a cool story. Yeah, obviously the rumor I think everyone hears right now is that Scott Moore is looking seriously at the University of Maryland. I don't know if he's going to end up there. I know Lock Haven is making a huge push to try to raise money and keep him around. They had 350 people at their social, so I think they have the manpower. And personally, I'd love to see Scott Moore stay at Lock Haven. I think he's doing a really good job, and I think he's the right guy for that school, right guy for that program. And School of Maryland could be fool's gold. They have 10 scholarships, but they have little to no tradition within the state. I know people say Helen Morales and Kyle Snyder, but let's get real. Like, actual depth of All-Americans through there is very low. They're very, very far behind the Big Ten. That's a huge rebuild, and you've got a lot of schools in that area that are doing very well. Virginia Tech, Virginia, George Mason's getting better. I think VMI is going to get a little better under Jim Gibson. Drexel, Penn, that's a really, really tough job. So I'm hoping he stays at Lock Haven. I think that might be the best move, too.
So if you had to put, I guess not odds, but who do you think the favorite is for the job at Maryland with everything you said, and maybe who do you think gets it?
Honestly, I don't have the slightest clue. I think they like Scott Moore. I think I've heard people say that they like Kerry Colat. I don't know how realistic those guys are. Moore would probably be easier to buy just because he has to do a lot of funding on his own at Lock Haven. Really, all of it. I don't think the school gives them any money, versus Campbell has more institutional support, believe it or not. So Colette might be entrenched there. If they don't get one of those two guys, your guess is as good as mine. There's a lot of good assistants out there that probably want to take that next step. It's just who's really to take on that rebuild. A guy who's not too far away is Jared Frayer at Virginia Tech. They're right down the road. I think he's been instrumental in developing Mekhi Lewis. I think if they're not looking at him and he has an interest, they're foolish. That's a guy I'd definitely have my eye on if I were them.
Frayer for me, I don't know. I think I go back and forth. Does Maryland make a splash with someone that's an established head coach? They find that young assistant that's on his way up. One of the first names that came to mind for me was Chris Ayers from Princeton, based upon what he's doing there. But then as I talk to more people in circles I talk to and interact with, I didn't realize how entrenched he is in New Jersey girls wrestling with his daughter, and the age they are, and he really has a great thing at Princeton going right now. I'd say that he's a guy that doesn't leave Maryland, doesn't leave Princeton for Maryland. Although because of all that he's done, he should be a guy that they should at least kick the tires on. Jason Borelli's name has been floated around. Matt Storniolo. I heard Coleman Scott, but Rob, you and I talked about it. I think it's a pipe dream for them. He's going from where he's got a great thing with a regional training center down at North Carolina, great staff, to going to a team where it's a total rebuild. I just don't think that he does it. Those are guys that have some head coaching experience. I read, for those that ever read Foley's mailbag from Intermat, he brought up some interesting names from an assistant standpoint. One of the ones I really like that I also suggest Jaggers from Ohio State. I think he's he's on the cusp of being a guy, but I don't think his first head coaching gig would be a Big Ten job. I just don't think it. I think it's a recipe for disaster. Not that I don't think he can do it. I don't. It's tough. It's tough to break in at a Big Ten program because they're going to make that splash for hire, and they may expect to see results in the near future. But you look at that team, that roster needs a complete overhaul. There's not a whole lot of talent on it, and they're only lone All-American. The only guy that scored any points for them at the Big Ten tournament, their whole lineup, they scored 13 points at the Big Ten tournament, and Yusuf Hamida scored all 13 of them. That's the state of Maryland wrestling right now. Yeah,
they're terrible. Jaggers wouldn't leave, I don't think. He gets to coach world-class athletes. Who might be more realistic is Donnie Pritzlaff. And I say that because, he helped to rebuild at Rutgers, or really build from the ground up. And I shouldn't say that because Goodell had them on their way, but he took them to the next level, and he kind of did the same thing at Wisconsin, where he stepped in and they wrestled their best when he was in the room. So if he's ready for that job, he doesn't live too far away. I think that's a more realistic name than Jay Jaggers. Coleman Scott, he'd be absolutely nuts to leave North Carolina for this job unless they paid him just crazy money. It's going to be an assistant or a small school guy. No one from the ACC or Big Ten from a head coaching standpoint would ever take that job, I don't think.
Yeah, and the other names that Foley threw out that are interesting nonetheless, Jordan Lean, who's currently on staff at Pitt, is interesting. And the other one that would be, I think, would be a huge coup for Maryland. But again, I don't see him leaving based upon a position he holds. Would be Mark Perry from leaving Iowa, the Hawkeye Wrestling Club, and doing a rebuild. And just because I think he's doing very well for himself back in Iowa City where he went to school, and I think he likes the position he's in because he left a good gig at Illinois to go back to Iowa.
Yeah, they're not getting Mark Perry. He's working with world-class athletes. I don't think he has the patience to step in and try Maryland. But
looking forward to next year, just do you want to give a prediction? Who's in potential national title contenders and maybe a little why? Go give one little teaser for our listeners. Team-wise, individual would be too much right now.
I still think Penn State. I think if they get Kassar and they get Cannell, they're the favorites in my eyes, though Iowa's right in the hunt. Everyone keeps talking about Iowa next year, but I think the year after they're probably better off because Penn State will lose Vincenzo, Hall, Cannell, and Kassar, who are 4 projected guys in their lineup next year, whereas Iowa only loses Lugo. So I still think Penn State's the team to beat next year. And I think Iowa's I don't want to say distant second, but somewhat distant. And then third and fourth, I don't know. Ohio State loses a lot. Oklahoma State loses quite a bit as well. So I think those two are kind of leading the pack right now.
You're saying with Cannell in the lineup at 97 and Rashid at 84. What about Mike Beard?
I think they gray shirted him for a reason because they want to redshirt him next year.
Man, that's scary because he had a great year wrestling the open circuit.
Yeah, he's going to be an animal when he comes out.
If they're able to do that, and he already prepped a year, he's going to be 21 when he hits his redshirt freshman year. That's that only again the rich get richer in that situation. But I agree. I think it's a 2-horse race next year. I think Penn State still has enough firepower in their arsenal to make another run at this. And again, they're still recruiting very well. I'd love to see parity. I do like to see Penn State on top, but I would like to see some more parity. Arizona State's been recruiting well. Not all their guys have been panning out, but maybe Coach Jones and company start to get those guys and put more guys in the podium, be a little bit more consistent. He's got some great individual talent. And he needs to, they're working on becoming a better team. And again, I feel like they're doing the things right to make that happen as far as scheduling and to that effect. I still think Wisconsin is going to be good in years to come. I think the Bono effect there is really going to help them. And don't sleep on like a Virginia Tech, getting their first national championship. That opens a lot of doors to other recruits because you got a guy on the top of the podium. So I think that really is a feather in their cap as well. So I'm always looking to see other programs come up and do well. And we've talked over and over again about the rise of wrestling in Pittsburgh and at Drexel and things like that. So hopefully those programs continue to move in the right directions.
Yeah, I think Virginia Tech really opened themselves up to getting more blue chip recruits after Mekhi Lewis. I mean, they have Hilligus coming in, but they always seem to be second or third with a lot of these blue chip guys. But getting that title is a big deal. And I think Iowa State, they're set to have a monster class here soon. They've done a lot with a little. I don't want to say a little, but they've done a lot with what they've been given. That complete 180 with underdresser. So if you're a big time recruit, you got to see that and know these guys are the real deal.
And there you talk about a rebuild, and Dresser knew that going into it, and was coach of the year this year, and went from like 1 qualifier to 9 in a span of a year. Folks, that's all we got. That's all we got on this wrap up. We'll be back in the near future. We're gonna kind of recharge our batteries a little bit, and we'll start to bring you some of the guys out on the freestyle circuit, the college guys, and we'll talk about that. And before you know it, we'll be back to doing previews for for the upcoming season. So it never stops, as you know. Wrestling's going on year round. You just gotta find it. So, Rob, any last parting words?
No, it's been a lot of fun, guys, and looking forward to talking to you again soon.
So that'll wrap it up for another week here in the open room with Rob and Joe. Thanks for tuning in, and as always, visit PAPowerWrestling.com for all your wrestling needs. Follow us on Twitter at PAPowerWrestle. Give us a thumbs up on Facebook, and check us out on Instagram. Don't forget, fans, you can subscribe to the PA Power Podcast on iTunes and listen to all 3 shows on Spotify. If you want to send any questions or suggestions for the show, email us at collegetalk@PAPowerWrestling.com. Thanks. Take care, folks.